Lee Daniels' 2024 film, The Deliverance, is a supernatural horror movie that was recently released on Netflix. On seeing the trailer, my wife and I were enthralled with the prospect of a new possession movie right before the Halloween season. As such, we went in with very high expectations for what we were hoping to see from the film, especially given the fact that I have loved Lee Daniels' previous work with Precious, The Paperboy, and The United States vs. Billie Holiday. To me, Daniels is one of, if not the best, African-American film director of our generation, alongside horror phenom Jordan Peele. Unfortunately, I was a little gobsmacked by the quality of The Deliverance because I thought it had some serious potential, but it didn't really live up to it. That isn't to say that there weren't a lot of positives, because there were a lot of them. The problem was the movie was a little bit boring. And I think that's maybe the worst thing that a movie could be. It is one thing to have a bad movie that you can sit through and laugh at because of how absurdly terrible it is, aka Borderlands, and it's another thing to have a popcorn movie that's entertaining yet not entirely full of artistic merit, like Deadpool vs. Wolverine. I think that the problem that Deliverance has is that it tries to be a horror movie while also being a gripping thriller. So without further ado, let's talk about Lee Daniels' 2024 film, The Deliverance. The movie opens up on the Jacksons moving into a new home as they've been bouncing from house to house as a result of financial troubles. Early on, I was intrigued by the premise of this film. We have the Jacksons led by the matriarchs Ebony and Alberta Jackson. Alberta has moved in with their daughter to try and provide some stability for the family as the father of the Jacksons is currently doing a tour in Iraq. The oldest of the kids, Nate, is played by Stranger Things cast member Caleb McLaughlin, who I think is very underutilized throughout the film. Instead, it is Demi Singleton, Shantae Jackson, and Anthony B. Jenkins who shine in the spotlight. Say what you will about child actors, these two put in a performance that nearly saved the film for me. Andra Day and Glenn Close do an amazing job as Ebony and Alberta Jackson respectively, so ultimately it is not the acting that bogs down the film. I think it might actually be the best part of the entire film, as the family dynamic feels incredibly authentic and real. I would have honestly opted for this to be a family drama instead of a horror film, because I think in that regard it has a lot of merit to it. Andre is up in his room painting on the walls of the kids' shared bedroom, where early and often is made stunningly aware that Ebony Jackson is abusive towards her children. Her stern behavior is something that you can see within her own mother's behavior, and you can make the inference that Alberta was in fact abusive towards Ebony when she was a child. In this regard, I love the dynamic of talking about the cycle of abuse and how someone has to be the one to stop it. That is not the case at the beginning here, where we watch as Ebony strikes her son Andre in the mouth, causing him to bleed. Alberta gives Ebony a look of disdain, where we learn that the last incident was in fact 3 weeks ago, if we are in fact taking Ebony's word as gospel. What I love about the house is that it feels so deeply grounded with Daniels' own background with Philadelphia sports memorabilia hanging up on the wall. Lee Daniels comes from West Philadelphia. Instead of basing the Amon's haunting case in Gary, Indiana, where it actually happened, he changed the setting to make it fit a better narrative. Instead, it appears that they are in Pittsburgh as a result of this bill. We are just under 10 minutes when we see Andre go down to the fridge to get a glass of milk. Instead, he doesn't grab one to drink from and decides to slurp it down like a Fortnite chug jug. We notice his eyes, which look glossed over, as Andre then goes outside to spot a dying crow that lies in the grass. Daniels adds a lot of information towards the family dynamic here. Ebony is on the phone with a collections agency talking about the family's financial problems. It is also here where Ebony spots a bottle of Absolute vodka and a wad of cash that she does not recognize. She confronts Nate about it, and he tells his mom that he was hiding it from her, revealing her past struggles with alcohol. At the same time, Nate has a black eye for being struck with an object from some kids in the neighborhood, to which Ebony goes and kicks the perpetrator in the nuts. Mom of the Year award? Again, we are only 15 minutes in when we see Andre talking amongst himself, which in actuality is him communicating with the spirit within the house. I can appreciate that this isn't a slow burn psychological horror movie because it gets right to the point with the possession. Fast forward a little bit and Andre is seen walking down the basement steps, and Daniel's use of lighting here is exemplary. You can pinpoint this moment as the exact time that Andre was possessed by the spirit. Ebony stumbles upon the propped up basement door and closes it in speculation. Another piece of information we are given is the fact that Alberta is currently battling cancer as she tries on various wigs. This is a good contrast to the sickness that corrupts Andre and is something that will come full circle towards the end of the film. As Alberta is trying to leave her chemotherapy, it is revealed that her medical insurance hasn't covered her chemo for over a year, and it's actually been Ebony who has been paying for her treatments. These small moments show the bond between the family despite the abuse. Ebony puts her own finances at risk just so that she can help her mother. I think that's pretty fair to assume. Ebony is awoken after a series of nightmares, and she again finds the basement door propped open. The infestation of the flies is getting worse by the second, which causes her to throw open the sink. Nate questions Ebony where his money is, and is revealed that he's been getting wires from his father in order to save up enough funds to leave the abusive situation. Ebony strikes Nate at this revelation, and he pushes her away in retaliation, which culminates in Andre getting hurt by what I can only assume is a microwave falling on his stomach. This is either the most inconveniently placed microwave, or Andre is an evil-ass child, and I think we know which one it is. The cause of the flies is determined to be a rotting cat corpse, and the roadkill remover says that he needs $60 or he'll put it back down in the basement. Ebony doesn't have it, but Nate in turn pays for it instead with the money that he fought over the night prior. A social worker by the name of Cynthia, played by Oscar award-winning actress Monique, questions Ebony about the marks on her kids. This is our secondary conflict for the story, and it shows the history of violence once again. Lee Daniels has a really good prevalence for talking about abuse, especially with Monique in Precious, so I think this is a really good kind of callback here. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, we spot Andre looking outside the window of the house onto the street. What you might initially think is Andre staring at Cynthia is actually him blankly staring at the Reverend in the car. The expression is a result of the spirit's past with the Reverend, realizing that the spirit must now start making their moves now. Shantae's birthday party reveals a lot about Ebony's nature once again as she gets drunk at her own daughter's party. In between that though, we hear a thudding noise coming from the basement, which is in turn a possessed Andre slamming his head against the door. It is important to note that the spirit is doing this as a result of the social services visit, trying to prepare for the next stage of possession. Again, there aren't any jump scares, so everything is built purely off tension, just like how Andre is standing in the corner talking with Trey. Ebony, in a drunken state, is made to look like she assaulted the kids in her sleep. Nate and Shantae don't say what happened, but again, Andre states that she threw him against the wall. As we will see in the future, the spirit can inhabit multiple bodies, so it is good to assume that the spirit is indeed framing Ebony. This isn't ever touched on ever again, but I think this is what actually happened. At school, we watch the same kind of possession as Shantae starts to bleed profusely down her legs. Andre takes a shit on the floor and throws it at his teacher, and Nate just laughs at a Bible story being told in class. It might just be me, but one of these things does not seem like the rest of the others. The kids are taken to the hospital where it is revealed that the examination showed nothing wrong with them. Nothing except for the bruises that were supposedly made by Ebony, but we can infer that it was the spirit of Trey framing her. Nate is once again possessed as he tries to drown Andre in the bathtub, and Ebony has to throw them off of him. Cynthia does another welfare check, and as a result of the actions of the previous night, Alberta grabs a bat and runs Cynthia off. The woman taking photos of the house and following Ebony is revealed to be a Pentecostal pastor played by Ingenue Ellis Taylor. Reverend Bernice states that she knows why her kids are acting strangely. They go to McDonald's of all places to talk about the possession. I don't know whether or not this was a paid sponsorship with McDonald's. It probably was, but I felt like it would have been more poignant to have the conversation in turn in the house that is haunted, or maybe even a church. That's just a small nitpick though, and that is a personal thing for me. Reverend Bernice reveals that she failed to cast out the demon that inhibits the house. She calls this process the Deliverance. In the flashback, we are shown a possessed woman cutting off her partner's head with an axe. I have to say this might be the worst acting in the film, as the possessed woman proceeds to rush at her daughter covered in blood. I have no idea how Daniels thought that this take was good enough for the final cut. While this story is being told, we watch as Alberta is attacked in the shadows. We can clearly make out the face of Andre in the shadows as the lightning flickers on. Ebony returns from the McDonald's to see the house on fire and Alberta dead on the ground. If you look closely enough, you can spot strangulation marks, something that the spirit did in the past.
Happened to Grandma?
It is the look in Andre's eyes that tells everything, as his deadpan expression turns to a look of somewhat satisfaction. Anthony B. Jenkins shines among Oscar-nominated actors. As Ebony drives with the kids, Andre states that it's all her fault that her mother is dead. This is the first actual time we are revealed the demonic nature in Andre as his eyes go pitch black. As I stated earlier, the eyes are integral towards Daniel's storytelling in the film. A possessed Andre continues to spin his web of lies and play the role of the innocent kid as Ebony asks for help in a diner. It is revealed through her examination that she was drunk driving at that time. As a result, the kids are taken away from her by the state. Andre Day's emotional acting sticks out as we watch her kids be whisked away from her. Ebony goes to Reverend Bernice to find out some answers, and she is told that demons prey on the weak, which is why this has happened to her. We cut back to social services, and Andre is being restrained by some nurses as he spews white foam from his mouth and talks in another language. He then props up and stares directly to what we can assume is Cynthia's direction. This part of the film briefly talks about SA, so if that makes you uncomfortable, please skip to this part of the video. While Ebony speaks to Bernice, she confides in her about the trauma she experienced as a child. The imagery of the basement steps is prevalent here as it shows a kind of descent into madness. Except here, it is Ebony who has been SA'd by an older man as a child. Andre talks with Cynthia, and we watch as he crawls up the wall in what might be the weirdest yet most fluid bit of CGI I've ever seen. Ebony sneaks into the hospital to take Andre to Reverend Bernice, and he wakes up in what might be the only jump scare this movie has to offer. At this point, the Reverend and Ebony have essentially pulled off the kidnapping. The Deliverance takes up the rest of the film, which is to say roughly the next 20 minutes. Reverend Bernice throws holy water onto Andre, which in turn shifts him into a demon-like Alberta. Her teeth are jagged and her skin is burned. This is what I said earlier about cancer being an analogy for the possession of the demon, and I like it a lot here, probably my favorite part of the film. As Reverend Bernice tries to do the Deliverance, we watch as Nate and Shantae are tortured by the demonic spirit. Out of context, this makes for pretty funny reaction gifs. The power of the demon proves to be too powerful for the Reverend, as we watch Alberta transform back to Andre off screen, in which a heavily makeup covered Andre states he's in here with us. At this point, the spirit attacks the Reverend, and Ebony stumbles on Andre crouching over Bernice. Andre's face changes throughout the possession and is highly accentuated with the acting. Ebony goes to help Bernice, who in turn hands her the holy water. Now Ebony must go down into the steps of darkness, something correlating to her past trauma, to confront her past and save her family. Ebony is quite literally fighting her own demons as the spirit takes the form of herself. Andre does a stellar job here, showing the internal conflict. Ebony here realizes that she must accept Jesus into her heart, and the demonic version of her states, "Don't do this to us." With this, Ebony and her family are reborn as the spirit is lit ablaze and dragged into the pit which it came from, aka Ohio. The end shows Ebony getting her kids back as they return to Philly from Pittsburgh and they try to make their life whole again. And that was The Deliverance. Was it a good movie? Probably not. But was it a decent enough watch? I don't know. The acting in the movie is its strongest attribute. All in all, I would say it does have some pacing issues. To put it bluntly, the film is just a little bit boring. I would say that this doesn't make for a great horror movie, but it does have a lot of good messages and imagery that Daniels is trying to get across. I would argue that this is horror adjacent, as you never get that scare you're hoping for. Part of that is because of the lack of jump scares, and I have to give credit to Lee Daniels for that at least. If you're looking to watch a good horror film, you could probably skip this one, but if you're looking for a story about the history and cycle of abuse and family dynamics within a horror adjacent story, look no further than The Deliverance. I have been Siren Zen, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.